Every time someone steps through my front door for the first time, there's a particular pause, a beat of silence before they say anything at all. I've watched it happen so many times now that I can almost predict the exact second it occurs. They expect a small Paris apartment to feel small. What they find instead is a 320 square foot studio that somehow feels like it belongs to someone with far more space, far more money, and far more time than I actually have. Today, I want to take you inside that apartment, and more importantly, I want to explain exactly why it works. When I first moved in, I made the mistake so many of us make. I blamed the size. I told myself that once I had a bigger place, everything would feel resolved. The clutter, the chaos, the sense that nothing quite fit. But 320 square feet was never actually my problem. My problem was that I was thinking about the apartment the way most modern interior advice teaches us to think, as a series of constraints to manage, rather than a canvas with a very specific, very rich design history waiting to be applied to it. It was during a particularly frustrating week of trying and failing to make my studio feel finished that I started reading about 19th-century Parisian interiors. Not out of any grand design ambition, simply out of curiosity about the city I was living in. What I found surprised me deeply. The apartments of that era, often even smaller than mine, were considered some of the most elegant domestic spaces in history. They weren't elegant because they were large. They were elegant because every single decision inside them was intentional, layered, and rooted in a coherent visual philosophy that modern minimalism has almost entirely abandoned. My entryway is barely a meter wide, and yet it is the section of my apartment that receives the most compliments. The secret lies in 19th century French entry hall tradition, where even the most modest vestibule contained a small mirror, a single beautiful hook for coats, and one carefully chosen object, in my case, a small brass dish inherited from my grandmother. The principle is simple. A tiny space doesn't need many things. It needs the right few things, arranged with the same care you would give to a much larger room, so the transition into your home feels considered rather than accidental. When I uncovered a section of original exposed brick behind a layer of crumbling plaster during a small renovation, my instinct was to cover it back up. It felt rough, unfinished, inconsistent with the elegant apartment I was trying to build. I'm so glad I resisted that instinct. That brick wall, dating from the building's original 1870s construction, became the single most important design element in my entire studio. It grounds every other choice in genuine history rather than decorative pretense, and it reminds me daily that this apartment existed, in some form, more than a century before I ever arrived in it. My apartment has a marble fireplace mantel that no longer holds an actual fire. Like so many converted Parisian and historic apartments, the chimney was sealed decades ago for safety. And yet I would never remove it, because it does something no modern shelf or console table could ever achieve. It provides a focal point with built-in gravity, a place where the eye naturally rests. I've styled it with rotating seasonal objects, candlesticks, a small gilded clock, fresh flowers in spring, and it functions as the emotional center of the entire main room, despite occupying barely any floor space at all. Almost nothing in my apartment was purchased new, and I say that with considerable pride rather than apology. My dining chairs came from a Sunday flea market exchange, found one at a time over the course of nearly a year, each slightly different from the last. My bedside table was a curbside find that I sanded and waxed myself over a single weekend. This approach requires something that modern furniture shopping does not: genuine patience. But what it gives back is a home filled with objects that carry real history, rather than a showroom assembled in a single afternoon from a catalog. My apartment is fortunate enough to include 2 small skylights, and I've come to believe they are quietly responsible for more of the room's perceived spaciousness than any single piece of furniture. 19th-century Parisian builders understood something we have largely forgotten: that light entering from above behaves completely differently from light entering through a side window. It washes walls evenly. It eliminates harsh directional shadow. In a tiny apartment, this matters enormously, because uneven lighting is one of the fastest ways to make a small room feel chaotic and cramped rather than calm and complete. For the first year in my studio, dining felt like an unsolved problem. A small table with chairs simply consumed too much precious floor space to justify daily use. The solution came from an old French cafe tradition: banquette seating, a built-in upholstered bench positioned against the wall, paired with just 2 or 3 chairs on the opposite side. This single decision reclaimed nearly a third of my usable floor area, while making the dining corner feel more intimate and considered than any freestanding table arrangement ever had. It is, without question, the single most transformative furniture decision I've made in this apartment. Storage in a 320 square foot apartment cannot simply be functional. It must also be beautiful, because there is nowhere to hide it. I learned to layer storage the way 19th century households did, treating every surface as a potential dual-purpose object. My banquette bench lifts to reveal linen storage beneath it. A vintage trunk beside my bed holds out-of-season clothing while doubling as a side table. Even my bathroom shelf, lined with glass apothecary jars, transforms ordinary toiletries into something resembling a small still-life painting. Nothing is simply stored. Everything is also displayed. do not own this apartment, and for years I assumed that renting meant accepting a home that could never fully reflect who I actually am. That assumption was wrong, and unlearning it changed everything about how I approach decorating. Removable picture rail hooks let me hang heavy framed artwork without a single nail hole. Peel and stick decorative trim added crown molding detail to a plain ceiling in an afternoon, fully reversible at the end of my lease. The 19th century aesthetic I was chasing did not require permanent architectural changes. It required thoughtful, removable layers applied with genuine care. My first attempt at furnishing this apartment was a disaster, and I want to be honest about why. I bought furniture sized for a small apartment, meaning small furniture, scaled down, almost dollhouse-like in its proportions. The result felt cramped and apologetic, as though the apartment itself were embarrassed by its own size. The fix came from studying historic Parisian interiors, where even modest rooms contained one or two genuinely substantial pieces, a tall armoire, a generous sofa, anchoring the space with confidence. Counterintuitively, fewer larger pieces make a small room feel more spacious than many small ones crammed together. With limited wall area to work with, I learned to treat color the way 19th century decorators treated it, as a structural tool rather than simple decoration. A deep, warm color on my kitchen alcove wall, distinct from the lighter tone in my main living area, creates the impression of two separate rooms within one open studio, without a single physical partition. This technique, sometimes called color zoning, borrows directly from an era when rooms were defined by their furnishings and finishes far more than by their walls, and it remains one of the most powerful tools available to anyone working with limited square footage today. Carving out a functional workspace within a 320 square foot studio presented a genuine challenge, because most desks are designed to announce themselves as desks, utilitarian, somewhat cold, entirely separate in character from the rest of a warm, layered interior. My solution was a slim vintage writing desk, the kind once used for correspondence in 19th century parlors, positioned beneath one of my skylights. It folds visually into the room's overall aesthetic rather than interrupting it, proving that a home office corner does not need to look like an office at all in order to function brilliantly as one. room can have beautiful furniture, thoughtful color, and excellent light, and still feel curiously cold if the textile layer is missing. This is something I underestimated for far too long. Heavy curtains, a wool throw across the banquette, a vintage rug beneath the dining area, embroidered cushions in slightly mismatched but harmonious tones. These soft layers are what 19th-century interiors used to transform a structurally simple room into something genuinely warm and inviting. In my own apartment, adding a proper textile layer did more to make the space feel finished than any single piece of furniture I purchased. Bathrooms in compact apartments are almost always treated as purely functional afterthoughts, and mine very nearly suffered the same fate. What changed my approach was recognizing that a tiny bathroom is actually the easiest room in the apartment to make genuinely beautiful, precisely because there is so little square footage to fill. A single vintage mirror, brass fixtures swapped in for builder-grade chrome, and a small shelf of glass apothecary jars transformed what had been a strictly utilitarian space into a small, considered moment of luxury. Proof that scale has very little to do with how special a room can feel. There was a period, early on, when I felt a quiet embarrassment about furnishing my home almost entirely from Facebook Marketplace and flea markets rather than from established retailers. That embarrassment has entirely dissolved, replaced by something closer to genuine pride. Every secondhand piece in my apartment carries a small story, a previous owner, a previous home, decades of use before it ever reached me. 19th-century households, even wealthy ones, rarely furnished entire rooms in a single purchase. Furniture accumulated across generations. My second-hand approach is not a compromise. It is, in fact, the more historically authentic way to furnish a home. I want to address something directly, because I think it matters. Nothing in this apartment was expensive in the way that word usually gets used. There is no designer furniture, no commissioned millwork, no significant renovation budget behind any of it. What creates the impression of luxury is not money. It is intention, repetition of a coherent aesthetic philosophy, and patience in sourcing the right objects over time rather than the wrong objects immediately. Affordable luxury, I've come to believe, is simply luxury achieved through thoughtfulness rather than expenditure. It is available to almost anyone willing to slow down and choose carefully. If you are watching this from inside a small apartment that you have, on some level, given up on, I want to speak directly to you for a moment. The limitation you are experiencing is very rarely the square footage itself. It is almost always a missing design philosophy, a coherent point of view that ties every decision together into something larger than the sum of its parts. My 320 square feet did not become beautiful because I solved a size problem. It became beautiful because I finally gave it a story to tell, borrowed gratefully from a century that understood small rooms better than we currently do. When that pause happens now, when someone steps through my door and stops, just for a second, taking in a room far smaller than what greeted them in their imagination, I no longer feel the need to explain myself. The apartment does the explaining. It says, quietly but unmistakably, that beauty was never reserved for large rooms or generous budgets, that history has already solved the problems we think are uniquely our own, and that a home becomes genuinely yours not when it is big enough, but when every object inside it has been chosen, rather than simply accumulated. That is the real secret behind these 320 square feet.